Welcome to Korea Society. Tonight's Young Professionals event, An Evening with Martin Kim, is a business program on international marketing and brand partnership, a sports program on an insider's experience with Major League Baseball and star pitcher Hyun-Jin Ryu, and a party with stadium snacks, beer, cocktails, and Choco Pies. So here's our video introduction. I am pleased to welcome Martin Kim, Korean Relations Manager for the LA Dodgers and interpreter to pitcher Ryu Hyun-Jin, and Kevin Kim, Principal at Mill Road Ventures, founder of Mental Math Abacus, and the co-host of the talk show The Portfolio, that highlights stories of successful Korean American professionals sharing their personal paths to excellence. And finally, I would like to thank our sponsors, Choco Pie, Hite Beer, and Peter Huang of Merrill Lynch. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Martin, thanks so much for coming out here. I know you've had a whirlwind tour recently. You just came back from Korea with Ryu Hyun-Jin. I know you were also working on a book. And so we really appreciate you taking the time to come all the way to New York.
It's a pleasure to be here with everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I want to thank Claudia and the entire Korean Society. When she first approached me about 2 months ago to come out here, I didn't think that all this would be going on this time of the year, but I'm just glad that I'm able to come out here, and I just want to show appreciation to everyone that's here today. Thank you very much.
Well, before we get into all the exciting things you're up to now, I just kind of want to take everyone back to when Martin Kim was formed, back to when you were born even. So if you could tell us, where were you born?
I was born in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, Argentina. That was my hometown, and that's why Claudia and I have this mutual thing going. I was born in South America. I came to the States when I was 10 and actually grew up just south of here in Philadelphia, and then I ended up in LA about 12 years ago.
And what about siblings? You have brothers, sisters?
Older sister, she lives in Korea.
Okay.
And that's it, just the two of us.
And so while growing up in Argentina, and it seems like there are a lot of Korean Argentinians for some reason in New York. There's Claudia. I think there's other people that you've been friends with since childhood in the audience as well?
Yes. At one point, Argentina and Brazil was actually a place where a lot of immigrants from Korea went to. A lot of them, when they migrated to America, either came to the New York area or to the LA area. If you go to LA, if you guys know the fashion district, it's like 80% all Koreans from Argentina there. There's actually a church just for former Argentinians that lived, or former Koreans that lived in Argentina.
Do they do their services in Korean, Spanish, mixed?
I have no idea. I've never been to it. That's a good question.
And growing up in Argentina, did your parents instill Korean culture in you? Was there a place that you could go for Korean cultural infusion?
I've been talking a lot about this recently. I'm really grateful to my parents for what they've done for me ever since I was young. The first thing is Koreans in Argentina in general are very community-centered. Very church-centered. So the whole cultural thing, the language thing growing up was always there to start with. After we moved to the States, I know a lot of immigrant parents try to force their kids to speak English. My parents, especially my mom, was very adamant that I don't forget my Korean. My mom had a policy at home that if you don't talk to me in Korean, I'm not going to answer you. My parents were both teachers in Korea, so they kind of had this thing going on. When I was young, I never really forgot the Korean that I had when I was a kid. But I did. The cost of that was I forgot most of the Spanish that I knew. Because when you're young, these things you pick it up much faster, but you also just drop it a lot quicker too. But now it all kind of worked out.
And you grew up in Philadelphia, attended high school there. Did you play a lot of sports? Were you a baseball fan even back then?
Baseball was always, if I can tell a quick story, when I was like 8 years old in Argentina. So in Argentina, when you say sports, it means soccer. Right. Like gym class is soccer. And the country was so poor back then that you don't get a nice soccer ball in gym class. Like we literally made one. But it was 40 minutes of just playing soccer. Boys, girls, anyone, just get it in, to just play. When I was 8, there was an exhibition game in Argentina. It was some Korean college team against, it was like Argentina, Chile, and it was like a baseball amateur kind of a thing. My father was really involved with the community. He said, "Hey, I got to take you somewhere." We go to this game, and first time I ever saw a baseball diamond. Up until that point, I thought that every field had a goal and like a center line. That's all you see. I saw baseball for the first time. My father explained it to me really briefly, just saying, this is what happens. I fell in love with baseball then when I was 8. My parents had this is funny, but we were in the fashion industry as well in Argentina. I go to my parents' warehouse in the back, and I'm trying to mimic a baseball uniform. So I start cutting things out, and I'm like, I'm going to wear this baseball uniform. And the biggest thing was those lines, the socks.
Right.
I get this long tape, and I put it on my socks, and my uncle gave me a glove, and I was like, hey, I'm going to play baseball. And that was when I was like 8 or 9 years old. When I was 10, and my parents were like, hey, we're going to move to America for your education. I was like, no, I'm not leaving. I love it here. Then my dad said, hey, you can play baseball in America. I said, let's go.
Start packing your bag. You were out of there, right?
So I came, we moved to Philly in August, and then Little League tryouts were early September. My uncle said, hey, Martin, your cousins are going to go. Why don't you come along? Let's do it. Let's go play baseball. And it wasn't more than 2.5, 3 weeks that we were in America where I started playing baseball. So I played baseball all throughout grade school, middle school, high school even. But it doesn't say that I was good, though. I was really bad. But that's how I fell in love with the sport.
But you also wrestled. You also played golf, the Korean sport, right? So
I wrestled because I looked really sexy in that singlet uniform.
Right.
No, I did it because my friends were doing it. Like 3 weeks later, I was like, do I suck at this? So I didn't wrestle for long, but I did play golf. Golf was something that my father really wanted me to do. He gave me the whole, hey, 60% of business deals happen on the golf course. You got to do that. So I picked up golf when I was young, and I'm glad I did.
And I know one of your former band members too, from high school is in the audience, and so we wish we had the picture of him in a really cute outfit right here today. But in his book, someday you'll get to see that picture.
Yes, band was actually a big part of my life. I'm very proud of it. It really instilled a lot of good values growing up, and I'm not joking when I say this, but it really taught me discipline. It taught me teamwork. It taught me, it really got me through a lot of tough times because I love music and being part of our band, and our band was actually really good at the time, right? We actually used to win a lot of things. But yes, I was part of the band.
And then you went off to university out in Spain?
No, so I went to school in D.C.
Okay.
I went to George Washington.
Oh, George Washington.
And even the reason why I went to GW was, the one thing that I had, and my tutor in high school used to always say, you have to take advantage of what you're good at and what differentiates you from other people. And when I really looked at it, and it was pretty much a language thing. When I was 17, 18, I was like, I can speak 3 languages. I think that's a pretty significant thing at that time. And I wanted to go to a school that was really diverse, really international. And after my research, and I can only get into GW because I couldn't do better than that. No one from GW here, right? It's funny because in DC, there's a thing called Battle of the Georges, and all the schools in DC play against each other. There's Georgetown American, George Mason, GW, and all these schools. And they talk trash, and then the big sign they hold up is GW, and it says Georgetown wannabes. And it sucks because we're always like, that's so true. That is really true. We all wanted to go to Georgetown, but they are here. That's right.
So then after your college education was over, what was your first job out of college?
So even that. So my last year in college, I realized that my Korean and my English is pretty good. I'm forgetting my Spanish, and I'm realizing that 1/3 of the world speaks Spanish. I need to get it back. So my last year in college, I went to Spain, studied abroad in Spain. It actually damaged me a little bit more. I don't know if you guys know, but Spanish in Spain is a little different than the Spanish that I knew in South America. It confused the heck out of me, but it was a great experience nonetheless. I come back and I decided to major in international marketing because of the language thing that I had. My first job was working for a small ad agency in DC.
And then after that?
So after that, so there was this thing that our college campus did. We have a sister program with UCLA, so GW UCLA. And every time this new group of Korean Americans would come from UCLA, I did a lot of like trying to help them get used to DC and just being a friend that
Right.
like that. And I would always hear a phrase like, Martin, you belong in LA, and people would say that to me here and there. And
Did you take that as a compliment?
I
or
had no
did
idea. I'd never been to LA
Okay.
before that, and I was like, you know what? I need to find out what
Right.
LA is like. So I remember after my senior year in college, I actually visited somebody in LA, and as soon as I got there, I was like, wow, this makes so much sense. It totally fits me.
What made sense when you got to LA? You opened your eyes. You walked around K-Town, probably.
I did. I did.
Yes.
I'm very weather driven.
Okay.
Some people are very moody with the weather. Like if it rains, like you're like all depressed. And LA, I don't know if you've been. I'm sure you've
I've
been there.
been to LA a couple of times.
98% of the time, it's like 75, sunny, no humidity. I love that part. I love the fact that being a Korean American, you just had different levels of opportunities in LA, and the fact that I spoke Spanish. Now that was
Huge,
a
right.
whole different thing. I call a lot of Hispanic people talking trash, and I'd be like, "Yo, don't say that. I understand what you're saying." But no, that's why I decided to move out there. And I was pretty young at the time, but I had this thing that if I moved out to LA, I would be able to do bigger things. So
And then how did you hear about the LA Dodgers job? Was it Craigslist, Monster.com, a friend?
so there was a lot in between going to LA because that was 12 years ago. It's a funny thing, every job that I had in LA was always very how do you say it was sort of playing at the bridge
Mm.
between the Korean culture and LA or vice versa. I worked at different ethnic agencies. I actually worked for a government agency. I worked for a Korean entertainment company that wanted to establish their brand in LA. So
CJ Entertainment, right?
yes, sir. Don't want to promote them too much. Um, but doing those kind of jobs, I kind of got really integrated with the community. I did a lot of community work, and there was a certain person in the Korean Culture Center in LA that knew of my passion in sports and my ability to be bilingual, trilingual. And the Dodgers at that time were going through the Frank McCourt era.
Mm.
We're talking baseball stuff now. This is when they had a hiring freeze, and the organization was literally like going to the pits. And the team being in LA, you cannot ignore the Korean community. There's a million fans there that potentially could be in the stands, and because of their experiences with Channel Park, they understand that it's a really valuable market. But they couldn't hire anybody. So what they would do is they would reach out to the Korean Culture Center and say, "Hey, can you help us do this? Can you help us do that?" Because they knew that the Korean Culture Center couldn't charge them, and they had to help out.
So they were
any way
looking for
could.
free labor, basically.
And they would do that up until one day this lady said, "You know what? I'm not going to do this for you anymore, but maybe this guy will."
Mm.
And they put me in touch. So that's how I first got introduced to the Dodgers. This is about 6 years ago. And I would do side projects for them, whether it was, proofreading an ad or reading a scouting report or different things that had to do with the Korean language or the culture. I started doing that type of work until one day they called me and said, "Hey, Martin, we have a job offer for you. We have 3 Korean minor leaguers in our system, and we need to find one interpreter for that job." And any boy that loves baseball that wants to work in sports, which is
Absolutely.
most guys have that dream at one point or another. I wanted to jump on it like that, but I was already like in my mid to late 20s. The job pays very low.
Mm.
I don't know if we're going to talk about this, but sports pays really, really low. And they were offering me something that it was less than what I made out of college. And I was like, "Look, can you guys give me anything more than that?" And then they said one thing. They said, "Martin, there's people that will do this job for free. Do you want this job or not?" And I said, "No, I can't because, I had bills to pay." And I
Right,
seriously, I literally did the math, and I was like, I can't afford to work in this job. So I
Right.
say, I said I kindly decline, but I appreciate the thought. So I declined that job. But one thing I did, and one thing that was always taught to me by mentors and reading different success books, it was always the power of networking and the power of keeping in touch. And we live in a society today where keeping in touch now means Facebooking and emailing. But I really went back to the old traditional ways. And one thing I did with the Dodgers was I would literally stop by once every 2 months and then meet with people that I knew, have lunch. I would literally cut articles about the team, write cards. I would send Christmas cards just to stay in touch with them. And then 3 years later, they called and said, "Hey, Martin, we may have a change in ownership. we finally want to fill this position called Manager of Korean Affairs. If you're interested, we think you'd be a great person for it. And then they said, but we still have to go through the whole MLB process, which is this long HR process. I went through it. I heard they got like 120 resumes. Every college kid that studied marketing applied
Right.
from USC and UCLA.
Right.
I got really lucky, and that's how I got in the door.
So just taking a step back, when you talked about that keeping in touch,
Mhm.
and you mentioned you sent cards out, just there's a lot of young professionals out there, and you could probably give them a little bit of advice on networking. So did you send out cards to the top management people?
No.
How many cards, and who did you send it to?
So I read this book. It was called How to Become a CEO. I read this book when I was in my early 20s. And one of the things that chapter said, and I still remember it, is they say something like, there was a point in time where people used to say it's not about what you know, it's about who you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that book made it a point to say no longer is it that. It's not about who you know, it's about who knows you.
Mm.
That's how you switch it up today. And I said, what can I do to make them, recognize me? How do they know that I exist? And I thought, going back to the traditional ways of networking, which is just taking the time to do things that other people won't do. Nowadays, after an interview, you shoot an email saying thank you. But they'll remember you if you do something just a little different. I mean, I'm not saying send a basket of fruit or something like that. But if you just find a way to just stand out just a little bit, and that's what I had in my mind. And I just thought, whenever I could, not in an awkward way,
Right.
obsessive way where you show up and start, hey. I started doing those kind of things, and I would send it to the people. So the Dodgers have an Asian department because of the history of the Dodgers in Japan, Taiwan, and Korea.
Mm-hmm.
That department is no longer there, but at that time there was a department head, and I would forward most of my information and my cards and greetings to that person.
Okay. And so then you get hired by the Dodgers. You're in
Mhm.
your dream job. So let's talk about life before Ryu, because I'm sure life after Ryu has
Life before
changed
Ryu was
tremendously.
much better.
So what was
Yes.
that like day to day? What did you do when you went into the office?
So when I first went into the Dodgers, my role was doing three things. It was connecting the Dodgers back with the local Korean community, essentially bringing them to the stadium. Number two, being the bridge between the KBO, the Korean Baseball Organization, and the Dodger Management Group. And then third, and this was the experimental, it was, hey, Martin, can you try to bring in some revenue from Korea? And then that's what I focused on, because that's something that, from my previous experiences, I was confident in. Which is funny that we're here today. But the very first thing I did was I'm going to try to make a lot of money for this team through the ways that I know how, and create a whole bucket that they never knew existed. And the first thing I did was I reached out to beer companies. I said, LA, if you guys have been to LA, like Korean barbecue, Korean bars, Korean karaoke bars, it's something that's mainstream now. When you go to a Korean barbecue place, you find 40% of non-Koreans eating there, and it's just continuing to grow. I said, I see a lot of people drinking Hite and OB or Kas or whatnot. So I reached out to all three companies, and through the networks that I had through the agency world, I got in touch with Hite's ad agency, convinced them that, hey, you got to spend some money with the Dodgers. Could you imagine you being able to say, we are the first Korean beer to be sold at an MLB ballpark? And Hite was everywhere at the time.
I would think that all three beer companies from Korea would love to get into Dodger Stadium and there'd be some competition. It wasn't the case?
No, it was not, because they all wanted to sell, but our requirement was you also need to spend the money so we can promote your product. For example, like this is a lesson that we learned with Choco Pie, but just because the product is in the stands doesn't mean it's going to sell. You have to equally spend the money to promote that product within the stadium so they know what it is. And the only company that was willing to spend that money was Hite. And Hite, obviously, is under a company called Chinlo Soju, which is a much, much bigger entity in Korea. So they were the ones that stepped up, and we started with that, and then we started selling them at like 8 locations. We started doing a lot of, we decided that beer is one of those things where you got to taste, and if you taste it, if you like it, you buy it. And we really brainstormed and did a lot of focus groups, and we decided that the best way for Hite to get into the stands was to be the cheapest beer in Dodger Stadium. We had a lot of opposition by, Anheuser-Busch and Miller Coors and the Heinekens and the Coronas, but we priced it at the lowest point. And we sold, the first year we sold it was only like 6,000 cups. And it was minimal, considering that we sell close to 2 million cups of beer every year. Yeah, that's a lot. And then this year, our numbers more than quadrupled.
Wow.
So we're growing. But, we did a whole press conference thing. I just started to find different ways to make this newsworthy. And because this was before Ryu even came, it was just a really good feel-good story.
And then Choco Pie. So then you just mentioned that it had some issues selling in the beginning.
Choco Pie was this year.
Okay.
So again, every year, not after I made that deal with Hite, now the management group is a little like, oh, Martin, that's really interesting. What else can you do? What more can you do? And I said, food is one of those things that's really easy to cross cultures with. The Choco Pie was the first thing that popped into my head. Who doesn't like a marshmallow-filled chocolate snack? And we had so many ideas. We had a company that wanted to sell cup ramyeon, cup noodles. Because in Korean baseball, that's really common.
Right.
I really dug in. LA City codes prohibit hot broth and hot soups being sold at Dodger Stadium. So we said sorry, and they're like, how about we do the whole you take the soup and then break it and then eat it dry.
Dry ramen.
Too much MSG. So we went after the Choco Pie. Choco Pie worked out because, again, it was one of those things we priced at the lowest point. I found out how much it actually cost to make a Choco Pie, and I was like, what? We should sell it for like 30 cents. But because of the baseball stadium, there's standards. And the Choco Pie thing started. The first year, we sold 7,000 boxes.
7,000. How many pieces in a box?
Two.
Okay.
So that was the other thing. So the great crossover was that a lot of non-Koreans bought into it. A lot of the Koreans were like, what? The whole dozen costs $2. So Koreans didn't buy the Choco Pies.
Koreans would just sneak it into the stadium, right?
Koreans do a lot of sneaky stuff without your stadium. Eggshells and kimbap, that's the biggest one.
Eggshells?
Boiled eggs.
Oh, boiled eggs.
They
and
just
then
put them in their
peel.
pockets and just come in, and then they're everywhere. And then you, after a game, you walk around, you're like, Korean said here, Korean said there. That's the Korean too. But yeah, so Choco Pie was a crossover. Great story. They're really happy. They're coming back now with a bigger buy next year. And the biggest thing I did for Orion was that I said, okay, so now being Ryu's interpreter, I have full access to the players and the clubhouse. So I always say, hey, can you send me just a lot of promo items? And I would literally just hand them out to all the players. And I would stack them up in the player's kitchen. And they'd be like, hey, what is this? And then I could talk to them about it. We have a player called Andre Ethier, very popular amongst the ladies. He fell in love with this product, and he would eat a Choco Pie before every game.
Wow.
I took a picture of it, and I said, do you want to be their spokesperson? He said, yo, I'll do it for anything. I love these things. And then I sent it to the headquarters, and then they sent like a lifetime supply of Choco Pies and Choco Boys. You guys know what Choco Boys? The Choco Songis, they're like little mushroom things. Orion makes those too. When those were introduced, oh my, it was game over. Everyone was like, Martin, what are these Choco Boys? And they call them Chocho Pops. They couldn't say Choco Boy. And then, so Orion's really happy. So Orion's coming back. And now this year, my next project is I'm trying to bring in melon bars.
Oh, yes.
I think melon bars would do a great crossover.
That would be great, yeah.
We couldn't do it last year because we had an exclusive thing with an American ice cream partner.
Okay.
But that now is done. So I'm working with Hite to bring in I think melon bars would do great.
That'll do fantastic.
Don't you guys think melon bars are delicious? Right? They're like, no, how about the BB? What's it called, the BB? I was like, no red bean popsicles, please. And it's funny, like Korean companies have their, because I worked at a Korean company,
Right.
and if anyone here works for a Korean company, they're different. Korean companies are different. They're very stubborn. And man, they were just like, no, just sell this product. But hopefully next year we can get melon bars at Dodger Stadium.
So ojingo wouldn't be on the list of things you want to bring into Dodger Stadium?
That would be a bad thing.
Really?
Yes.
You never know, you know. So let's talk a little bit about the signing of you. What involvement did you have in his signing?
So I'd say the signing of Rue was one of the most memorable parts of my entire life. So we have a president and a GM, and the GM of the team somehow knew. Obviously, I was the one that was tasked with following Rue long before anything was public. I had to go online every morning, read all the Korean papers, and had do a one-page report of Rue's games, his outcome of the game, any news outside of baseball, because they actually look at a person's personality. Is he, prone to issues?
Right.
Is he a rebel? Things like
Character
that.
issues.
Yes, sir. So I would do this one-page report every day. I would watch his films every day, and I would report things to him. When the news broke that we may post for Ryu, it became a pretty big deal. And ever since that day, the day that we started posting for him, I would have meetings with the president and the GM really often, whether it was a phone call or a conference call or actual meeting. And that's when I was like, wow, I came in here selling beer and trying to break these deals for the Dodgers. And here I am, not influencing the decision. I'm never going to take credit. I wasn't like instrumental in bringing him. No, but I was there, definitely their source of information. And I would constantly feed that to them. And deep down inside, I had a desire and really hoping that he would sign because I knew that if he did, my life would change.
And it did change.
Yes, it did. So the news was that he signed with the Boris Group. The Boris Corporation is by far the pioneers in baseball agencies. They changed the entire game of baseball. This one man called Scott Boris, every team hates him because he does so much for the players. But Ru signed with him because Chu, you guys know Shinsu Chu signed with Boris. So the big thing was every morning I would come in. I don't know if you guys know how the posting system works. What happens is a Korean team who still owns the rights to the player, they declare that we're going to post this one player. They make it public. Then every team can start bidding, is a closed bid, into the MLB office, which is down the street. Then MLB takes the winning bid, sends it to that team, and the team can then accept the bid or they decline the bid. The posting system has flaws and advantages. The flaw is that if a team declines the bid, then that player is stuck in Korea for another year. He's got no options. If they accept the bid and the player can't come to terms with the contract, that player has to go back to Korea and cannot come out for another year. It's really favorable to the MLB team. So when the posting came out, there's an amount. So for example, you look at Yu Darvish last year, his posting amount was like $50 million just to negotiate with him. And that money is strictly taken by the team that owns him. $50 million just for saying, you can talk to our player. Before Ryu, the record for the bid for a Korean team wasn't even close to $1 million. Every morning I would come in and they would ask me, Martin, what's the number? What do you think? They're not going to listen to me. It's just for fun. And I'd be like, 10? 10 would be record setting.
Right.
They're like, I don't know. And they would ask a lot of our scouts in Asia. Long story short, I'm at a bar the night where the posting, okay, so the posting was posted, it was accepted. I knew our team posted because they told me that, hey, we did post. And there's all these leaks when me and Tad are talking now. Reporters are calling each other, hey, what team is it? And then the three names that came out were the Rangers, Texas Rangers, the LA Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs. The three teams were in for it. And the number that came out, they were like, hey, we think it's in the 15s. Next phone call, dude, I heard it's in the 20s.
Wow.
And they're like, the winning bid is over 25 million. And I was like, oh, that's not us. That's not us. Because the last I heard, we were in the low teens. I was like, damn, that sucks. And then reporters kept calling Martin, we think it's the Dodgers. And then that night, I'm out in K-Town having a beer with some friends. And then I get a call from my boss saying, Martin, I don't know if you heard, we won the posting for Ryu Hyun-Jin for $25 million. It was crazy. It was insane. Because for me, I was really picturing like, wow, my job is going to become so much harder now. But we won the bid, and now you have 30 days to come to terms with Ryu. And here's the other side where this whole posting thing is advantageous to the team. If you don't come to terms in 30 days, Ryu goes back to Korea. No other team can get him. So any major league team can be, for example, the Yankees and Boston, okay? They hate each other. The Yankees go after a player that Boston wants. They post $100 million for him, and all they do is just don't come to terms with them. Then Boston won't get that player. So a lot of times teams do that. They do it just so that their opposing team doesn't get that player. So a lot of us thought maybe LA did that just for kicks, like
Right.
$25 million really for a good guy that, Rue is good internationally, he's good, but he's unproven.
Right.
But it was actually true. They were interested, and then I actually had a vacation to Japan last year in December, a full-out 20-day vacation set. The GM calls me and says, Martin, we have 30 days. I need you to be with me every day for 30 days. Are you okay with that? Oh, yeah.
And you had
Yes. I will be there tomorrow morning. I cancel everything. Fast forward 30 days. The deadline is 5 p.m. New York time, Sunday afternoon. Scott Boras, I don't know if you guys know, he has like a PhD in psychology. He's a genius.
He's brilliant.
He's a brilliant man.
Negotiator.
He doesn't talk to us. The first day we talk, he talked to us one day, throws a number at us that's like bigger than you, Darvish. And then he doesn't talk to us. He won't answer our calls, won't do anything. The day before the deadline, he comes back with a different number. We're like, we are worlds apart. We're not even close. In the meantime, I'm tasked with trying to get into Rue's parents, trying to get into Rue's brother, trying to do this, do that. We need to know what he wants. We have to go past.
Were you able to get to his parents? Were you able to?
I was
talk
so
to them?
fortunate that our scout in Korea knows his parents really well. One of my close friends, he's friends with Rue, so we went that way. But he was a closed book. Like he wasn't. He was held in an apartment in Irvine, California, unable to. They took his phone away. Don't talk to anybody. Don't get in the way of our negotiation. That's Boris, though.
Right.
And then, long story short, we are on the phone. Our GM is a three-way conversation. So we're in the GM's office. On speakerphone is MLB. MLB is going 5 minutes, 4 minutes. Because if we don't come to terms, the deal is done.
Right.
Boris is on a conference on a different phone. And now this is a scene from the most intense negotiation table ever. I had diarrhea. Like, I was like, can I leave? I don't want to be in here right now. I'm texting Tad, what the heck is going on? And then they're going down, the numbers going, and then they're throwing out numbers like 10 million, 15 million, 50 million, 45 million, and then little terms in the contract. And the things that they come to terms, and this is why Boris is the man, is because he pulls all the little things out in the last 10 seconds of the deal. When they know we're up against the wall. The most intense 5 minutes of my life, and then with 2 seconds left, deal, agreed, MLB, got it. They hung up the phone, 2 seconds left, and then everyone just went, oh yeah. With like 15 seconds, I don't know why I wasn't thinking, I decided to ask the GM a question. Ned, and it was totally irrelevant to the situation. Ned, do you think that... He goes, Martin, not now! I was like, I'm so sorry.
Do you remember what the question was? Did you say, do I look like Jeremy Lin or not?
No, it wasn't like that. It was related to the issue, but irrelevant.
Right.
And long story short, we came to terms, we shook hands, and then that's when Ned first said, Martin, do you want to be Rue's interpreter? He seems to like you.
I see.
I said, no, sir. I'll pass on. My job here at the office is much greater. That night, everything was done. He posted a photo on his Twitter, and it was him wearing all the stuff I gave him, and he said, I'm officially a Dodger. That photo went everywhere. That night, he wanted to celebrate, and he said, hey, 한통 쏠게, I'll buy.
Right.
So we meet at a bar in Koreatown, and we were having a drink or 10.
Hite, of course, right?
Yes. and a lot of Choco Pies.
Of course.
And melon bars for dessert. And then I remember we were drinking, and then Rue was like, Hyung, let's make a promise right now. He goes, I trust you. He said, can you promise me that you will never, as long as I'm here, you will never betray me?
Wow.
And then I said, only if you promise me one thing. I said, if you ever get voted to the All-Star game, I have to be your +1. Because, All-Star, if you get chosen, you're allowed one person. And he goes, fine. We shook on it. We drank on it. And that's when our journey with Rue started.
Wow. That's an incredible story. Now, how good is Ryu's English?
Uh, I think the proper question is how bad is his
Okay.
English?
He must be really close because all of this going on YouTube, and he'll get to see all this. Remember?
No. Yeah,
Yeah,
he won't understand this anyway. No captions, right?
No
There's no like 영어 이렇게 못해. No, his English was very poor. But I realized closer to September that his English wasn't so bad. What it was he was more timid and shy to really bring it out. It's almost like every kid goes through this too. I could relate because when I first came to the States, yeah, I understood and you know the language, but it's embarrassing to speak it in front of people that could judge you. For example, you guys know Ichiro. He was 15 years in the major leagues, still uses an interpreter.
Right.
It's the whole pride thing, but his English wasn't very.
So, and when you end up interpreting for him, then you're doing it on the field, you're doing it off the field. Is there ever a time when you have to kind of modify the translation to be politically correct, or just to fix it up a little bit and cover for him?
Many times. So I decided, it took 3 steps, and it took 4 days before the season started, where the GM calls me and says, "Martin, you got to take one for the team. You have to be his interpreter." I declined 3 times. I knew, number one, that it would be a life that would change everything that I was already doing, personally, socially, in every way possible. And number 2, my goals are not in baseball. I don't want to be a GM one day. I may want to run the marketing department of a team one day. So my goals were always business sided. And I knew, at my age, I'm not like out of college. And of course I would love, it would be a dream to be part of a traveling team. But yeah, anyway, it took 3 no's for Ryu to finally be like, "Hung, you have to do this for me." And I thought about it. The GM, obviously the GM for a baseball team is like the president of a company personally calling you saying, "Hey, would you do this for the team?" I couldn't say no. I decided to take the job. But the beauty of it is that they didn't say, "Oh, just do this." They said, "Hey, do both." I was like, "Thanks."
Did they raise your pay? A little bit?
No.
Okay. As long as
Can you make sure that goes out?
So people all know now you have a very close relationship with Ryu. So I could imagine people trying to bribe you to get his signature, get close to him. What's the most outrageous bribe you've had offered to you?
Man, it's true. So as the season went along, I started realizing that, wow, this kid is really something. The most memorable and most prideful thing that I went through this season was going through 15, 18 different cities and in seeing the Korean population congregate to watch this guy pitch. The most memorable was Toronto. But as I'm seeing that, wow, this kid actually means something to Koreans. This kid actually is giving a hope to a lot of these immigrant first generation people. The things they come up to and say to him when we're eating or drinking coffee. And so I decided to take on the role of being his publicist. Because of my PR background, I said, "You know what? Trust me. You're going to trust me. Do the things I tell you to do, and don't do the things I tell you not to do." He goes, "Okay, fine." So we get interview requests on average 3 times a day. We said no to everything. What we need to do is we're going to do favors for regular people. The media is going to cover you no matter what. If you do an interview for 123, I don't want to use letters because most of them are actual broadcast stations. So if you do a interview for 123 News, 234 News is going to get angry. 567 is going to get angry. So we're going to make it groups only, nothing exclusive, and we'll focus more on doing things for regular people. And he said, "Okay." So we would get requests. I think on average, he signed about 50 baseballs per week, 10 jerseys, unlimited hats. And, a lot of it now came through me. So you got to the point where even when the organization needed a favor, they would say, "Hey, Mark, can you get this done?" So, I wouldn't say bribes. I got a few things as thank you notes. The best bribe that I got was, I don't know if you guys know, but, I have these dark circles under my eyes. And he actually became news in Korea. This one makeup company from Korea, uh, halfway through this, sent me a care package, and it said like, "We see you on TV, and it breaks our hearts to see your dark circles. Use this product; it should help you." P.S. Here's a return envelope. Can we get 10 signed baseballs? Things like that.
Right,
And
right.
I would try to do as much as we can, but
Right.
you would be shocked if I told you who asked for these autographs.
Right.
I don't want to name
Right,
names,
right.
but it ranged from top level government agencies, elected officials, all the way to corporate chairmen and their offices, and it was pretty insane.
Well, I hope you'll get some for the Korea Society for their next annual gala to be able to donate some stuff.
I will do that.
Thank
I
you
will
very
do
much.
that. Thanks for putting me on the spot like that.
Yeah,
That was
sorry.
good.
I had to do something out here. So you just recently came back from Korea with Ryu, and you were talking about as big as he is here in Korea, it's just Romania, right?
So the season's about to come to an end. I tell my bosses, "Hey, I'm going to take a month off." For 180 days, I didn't have one day off. Being somebody's interpreter, the toughest thing is that you're always on standby. There isn't a set like 9 to 5 thing. At 4 in the morning, he goes, "형, 나 배고파. I'm hungry." You would think that's being someone's assistant, but the truth is, if he's hungry, he can't order the food he wants to eat. So as an interpreter, you have to be there for him. If he wants to go see somebody, he gets in a cab. He doesn't know how to tell the cab driver how to get somewhere. You have to go with him. I was literally with him every day he was awake. Except, even sometimes we even had to just pass out in the same bed because we were so tired after a game. I don't know why I just said that. But then,
It's because you feel comfortable here. You're with family.
see, I regret. Oh man. He was really appreciative of the things I did for him this year. He said, "Young, when I go back to Korea, I want you to come with me. I'll take care of you. Just I got you your flight." He gets endorsement deals with every Korean company wants him right now. A really famous hotel in Korea endorses him. Hey, hotel, everything's covered. I said, "You know what? Why not? Let's go." And I wanted to see firsthand what it was like. I tell the team says, "Hey, Martin, go with him. Report back. How big is he really?" We go there, and it all starts from the airplane. We get into the airplane. Everyone just falls in love with them. And then we go. You guys know that cool Korean culture, like when celebrities and athletes come out of the gates, the media is there, and you have to do a live interview right then and there. We come out, we get our bags, and you see the sliding doors, and it's kind of like tinted, But you start like when it starts opening and closing, you start seeing, and all you see is like 300 cameras, just all pointed at the gate, and we're like, okay, this is gonna be a big deal. We open the door, he goes out. I was right behind him, and there were so many flashes. It felt like one light.
Wow.
You hear the shutters, but you don't feel the flickering because 350 cameras at once. His exit of the airport was so big, NBC Sports aired his exit live, like live TV. Like why? But they did. He came out, one like this. His parents came out. They hugged him. They hugged me, and then right away they went to address the media for 10 minutes, and they had a media backdrop. That company spent $800,000
Wow.
for that, and every penny was worth it because it generated like 1,500 articles, and also the when you get picked up from the curb, 6 different car companies were like, "Hey, can we pick you up? Can you use our car to pick you up?" He picked Maserati out of all the cars. So 2 Maseratis pull up. We get 10 police officers trying to escort us out. Everything's falling apart. Like we get disconnected. So it was him, his agent, me, and his brother. The 4 of us went out. We get all disconnected. He gets in the Maserati. He realizes that it's really small. He's like, "What? Yo, I can't." It was really funny. He actually drove off, and then he's like, "Yo, everyone pull over. I gotta get out of this car." He got into a different car. And then post that exit, they had to schedule. We got so many requests for one-on-one interviews,
Right.
that we had to set up a press conference in a theater because there wasn't a place big enough. The press conference was also aired live on TV. It got to the point where so many people were interested in my story that they just said, Martin's he's going to go in the press conference too. So I did 20 minutes, he did 40 minutes. But that was actually one of the most memorable things of this whole thing.
And you had requests while you were in Korea for a book?
Yeah. So when I was there, so my immediate boss in the Dodgers, he's an ex-professional football player and baseball player. He said, Martin, enjoy this ride. If I can give you one advice, keep a journal. He's like, I was a professional athlete for 12 years, and I think back now, and it's all memories. Do me a favor and keep a journal. You never know what it's going to be used for. At the very least, it would be something you can tell your grandkids. So, all right. So, with iPhones nowadays, we spend a lot of time on the bus and on the plane. After every series, I would just jot down some notes. And then 3 publishing companies came to me and said, hey, we want to write kind of like a memoir of your entire season and your perception of Ryu. You were the first person seeing the entire thing. And I had that journal. And of course, I have exclusive photos on my phone and my camera that reporters don't have access to. A lot of the stories of him with other players, a lot of stories of him outside of the stadium doing personal things. And I really realized that in Korea, millions of people are interested in what I went through. And I felt almost unfair that I wouldn't share that. So I ended up agreeing to a thing, and the book's coming out. Actually, the one condition I had was I want this book to be out before Christmas. That's the marketing side of me talking.
Right.
I was like, I want this to be a top seller during Christmas season. Got to make money. So the book's coming out in middle of December. I have to go back to Korea to promote the book. And Ryu, again, he's promoting everything for me. He wants me to do well. He agreed to do a signing with me. In fact, the first page of the book is it's a letter that he wrote to me. Because I knew it's so marketable. Like, hey, book by Martin Kim. Who cares? Ryu writes a letter. Probably people buy it.
So you mentioned that down the road someday you wouldn't mind being a marketing executive head for a professional team. So where do you see yourself in 5 years now? Ryu's contract is for 6 years, right?
6 years with a 5-year opt-out option.
Oh, there's another 5. Okay. So you could be there for 11 years because you promised.
No. I mean, in the 6 years, he can opt out after 5.
Oh, okay. Got it.
That's a great question. A lot of people are asking me that question these days. Even what are you going to do next year? Rue's doing a great job of bribing me to come back next year. I told the team that I can't do it. It was really, people don't get it. People are like, dude, that was a dream. I'm like, no, it was your dream. It was one of the hardest years of my entire life. I literally had to just let go of everything that I care for, everything that I want to do.
Right. Intense. Right?
Yeah, just being in somebody's standby. Even when I was sick, finally, the season caught up to me. We were in Arizona. I'm sick. But one of the good things about a professional team is that the first cough, 3 doctors, hey, what's wrong with this guy? No, it's awesome. Like they'll do the entire checkup. They found out I had a virus from just stress. They quarantined me in the team hotel. They said, you cannot leave this room for 2 days. Food service, everything in. Do not talk to Ryu face to face. If one player gets sick because of me,
right,
that's a lot of money and potential win that we cannot gain. So even when we traveled outside of the hotel, like don't get on the team bus, take a cab. But even when I was sick I was sick in bed, I had to have my phone on standby because if there's an important conversation going on, I need to chime in and get in there. But you know what? To answer your question, I think in 5 years, I felt 2 big areas that I could help. Number one, more and more, there's going to be more professional athletes crossing over from Korea to the States. Golfers, baseball players. It's happening. Because even knowing Ryu, I got to become friends with a lot of other Korean professional athletes, which is a blessing. But seeing that need where they need somebody not to teach them the language, but teach them the culture. That's the most important thing I realized this year with Ryu. It wasn't so much the language, but it was about how to understand, how to react, and how to integrate yourself into this culture. Because all the players, they do look at you kind of weird.
Right.
One of the big things was like eating. Koreans like to eat loud.
Right.
When you eat even spaghetti, you got to make that sound.
Yeah.
YouTube Ryu's ramen commercial. He was eating like that. Even things like that. I'm just like, yo, bro, yo, you cannot eat like that. Like it's frowned upon here. It even like like elevators opening and being the first one to come in. Like no, you get the ladies in first. And just
Little things,
little
right,
things,
right.
which she picks up quickly.
Right.
But so I saw a need there. I really felt like if there's any way I can help future athletes, kind of help them integrate into professional sports here, that'd be a great thing. But more importantly, like you said, my goals were always in the business side. My skill sets are more fitting on the business side of things. And this past year, I helped out about 6 Korean corporations get a strong branding in Dodger Stadium. And a lot of times they ask me like, what other stadiums should we try to invest in? So now I'm thinking, you know what? If I can be that one person that can help Korean corporations, I mean, right now they're at, everybody knows Dodger Stadium, Yankee Stadium.
Right.
They don't know about the other 28 stadiums here.
Right.
So if there's a way I can maybe be that bridge, that might be a pretty smart and lucrative way.
So you told the Dodgers you're not going to be the interpreter next year.
I told them that, but
That means there's a job opening out there for some of these people.
well, so there's something called an exit interview where when the season ends, the president, GM, the other GMs all sit down with Ryu or each player, and they do like a let's go over your year. How was it? And during Ryu's exit interview, he said they were jokingly saying, "Hey, are you going to come back? Are you going to learn English this off season?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm going to try." And he said, "But if Martin isn't here next year as my interpreter, I'm not going to pick up a baseball."
Whoa, that's a lot of
He
pressure.
said that, and the worst thing is I have to interpret that. So I'm just like, oh, he said that you should give me a raise, and he's really good.
Well,
But that's
well, in closing, what kind of advice, final words would you have for people who would want to kind of follow your career path? I think you've had an exciting run, and you have an amazing background, and I think a lot of people will try to mimic that. The younger people, especially. So, what kind of words of advice would you have for them?
one of the best things that happened to me this season was that I got numerous emails, letters, and phone calls from people who are in college and who want to work in sports. And I understand that every kid growing up wants to somehow work in sports.
Right.
It's I mean, I'll be honest, it's a lot of fun.
Mm.
It's great. The fact that my office overlooks a baseball field, the fact that it's just like you can see your company win and lose, and it's just there's something about it. It's just really fun. And I would get these a lot of questions like, hey, I would love to have the job that you have. How do you get there with this and that? And I really try to think about it because I have a passion for the youth, and I try to do a lot of these things for mentorship programs and whatnot. But it's really tough to say there's one thing you got to do. If I could give advice to kids who want to work in sports, there's a reason why there's not that many jobs in sports, because people, once they're in, they don't want to leave. Once you're in, you either retire or you get canned. That's what I've seen. So if there's any advice I can give is, even if you graduated college from an Ivy League school and you want to work in sports, you have to be able to go in there and try to sell tickets and get in the door. They all promote from within. I know a lot of like entertainment companies are the same way, but if you want to work in sports, you have to find any way possible, be as creative as you can, and really put down what you think you should be, just to get in the door. And then once you're in, you're kind of in.
I see.
The second thing is I realized that there's a lack of Asian Americans in the sports world.
Right.
Not in the performance part, but in the offices. And I think it dates back to maybe our parents' generation, where they understand that they never take sports business seriously.
Mm.
You have the traditional jobs that everyone wanted to be, but you fail to realize that it's actually a really, really big industry. It's a really lucrative industry, and it is a tough industry. It's one of those industries where it's so hard to break into it, and even when you're in there, it's so hard to find what you want to do. But there's slowly more Asian Americans. There's an Asian American GM. Even in football and in basketball. And
right.
I think with the growth of sports integrating globally, this is going to continue to grow.
Well, Martin, thank you so much for taking time to be here. I think everyone had a great time and learned so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have time for questions. I'm not sure.
Yeah, enjoyed the good article on New York Times on you and Mr. Ryu. I'm sure many of us read it, and Kevin covered very well. So I'd like to take you to the pitching mound. When things not going too well, the pitching coach or manager comes out to talk to the pitcher. What do they talk about? All right. So, and
That's a
what
great
the
question.
pitcher said. Oh,
All right. So early on in the season, we've established one thing. So MLB rules say that the interpreter can only come out with the coach, manager, or the trainer. When the catcher goes up there, you can't go out there. Which brings me up to a really quick, funny story. One of our catchers goes up to the mound and says, "Hey, Ryu, hey, calm down. Hey, just calm down. You're pitching too fast. Calm down." So Ryu's like, "Oh, pitch low, pitch low." 4 balls low in the ground. He walks, and he comes out. He's like, "Young, he told me to pitch low. No, calm down." Things like that happen. But what happens when the pitching coach goes out there? It's really that was one of the first things that I was looking forward to. I was like, what did because as a fan, you're always like, what did they say? You go out there and it's really simple. It's how do you feel? How you doing? Can you get the next guy out? It's totally just to read his confidence level and to see how tired he is. The second most important reason why they go out there, and I know this is crushing for some of you guys, is simply to buy time for the bullpen guys to warm up longer. Baseball is a game of timing and strategy. A pitcher when he's warming up in the bullpen, he can throw 10 pitches and come out there and then have a horrible outing, or he can pitch 30, be loose, and have a good outing. So they go out there just to buy time. They go out there and just talk about nothing. Hey, the next guy when he's do this and do that. Sometimes when the players get together, also to buy time. You guys know Uribe? When Uribe, he was really close with Ryu. He goes out there. He doesn't speak English because he's Hispanic. Ryu doesn't speak English because he's Korean. But they go up there at least once a game, and he goes, "Hey, what's my name?" And they put the glove up so they don't know. No, Uribe, what's my name? Uribe, what's my name? Why Uribe? Okay. And it's things like that is strictly to buy time for Ryu, just to give him a rest, to slow him down a little bit, to give the guy in the bullpen some more time to warm up. So there's really nothing that important.
One quick another question. There is a Korean American sports writer at the New York Times, Andrew K. Do you know him, or is he here today, or anybody have contact with him? We sure like to.
Andrew and I met when we came here to play the Mets early in the season. He introduced himself, and one of the jobs that I naturally took on was also being a media coordinator for the Korean press. He came up to me and said, "Hey, Andrew from the New York Times," and I said, "Hold the thought, Ryu, you got to do this interview." So when it comes to like ESPN, New York Times, LA Times, the big entities in the media world, I made sure that he took care of them. But early in the season, we did talk to him. Yeah.
There's a question over there.
Hola Martín.
¿Qué pasó?
¿Qué pasó? Muchas gracias por venir aquí y encantado de conocerlo.
He says he's going to buy me a beer after.
Definitely.
Mucho gusto, igualmente.
So I want to ask, how did basically you are able to speak 3 languages, right? So I was wondering, how did being able to speak English, Spanish, and Korean help you, especially Spanish in this case, as a professional who's in the sports industry?
No, I answered this question recently in Korea, and I have to be honest, I'm not a professional interpreter. I didn't study the languages. I would never say I'm a great interpreter. What I was confident in was relaying and delivering the message behind what each person was trying to say. And then I know you asked earlier, but even during the press conferences, a lot of times they're like, "Martin, you didn't interpret correctly." Yeah, that was intentional. Because the Korean sports interview is very self-centered. They ask Ryu questions about him, and then he has to answer it with words like "I," "me." Back then I did this, I felt this way. As a sports fan, watching SportsCenter 2 hours every day, I understand how a proper press conference or interview is supposed to be like. Right. So I would, in the middle, a lot of times make it more team-oriented, and I would pretty much package it so it makes more sense to the American media. A lot of English media reporters actually came up to me and said, "Hey, why do they only ask questions about him?" That's when I said, "Okay, we have to change this a little bit." But going back to what you're saying, the Spanish thing helped me because Ryu became really close with all of the Hispanic players. Luis Cruz, Adrian Gonzalez, Juan Uribe, Puig. These guys only speak Spanish. So being able to speak Korean to Spanish, although it was really confusing at times, you definitely lay down that bridge for Ryu and those guys to become really close. And it also created a way for me to get close to the Hispanic guys because then they started trusting me a little bit, and they would ask me to do favors for them and do things for them. And at this point, I mean, I can't say too much, but I'm working with two other Hispanic players, trying to get them endorsement deals with Korean companies. So things like that. I mean, I'm truly blessed for it. The only thing is that like Cuban Spanish and Dominican Spanish is like really rough. Half of the time, I'm like, what are you saying? Like, this sounds like just noise. But it definitely helped me a lot, especially in sports. Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Next question. I think there's one right over there in the back.
Hi. Well, thank you for coming and taking your time to speak to us. I've got two questions. First off, what do you think is the biggest challenge retaining and growing the Asian American fan base? And second, I work in sports myself, and I was wondering what are the biggest challenges you find personally working in sports as a Korean American or Korean.
What do you do in
American.
sports?
I work at the NFL and our
Dude, I
consumer
want to work
products
with you. I would love to work in the NFL.
Well, we can switch. I love baseball too, so we'll do like
we
a
go.
1 year switch off.
That sounds like a good plan. The first thing to answer your first question, the Asian fan base, I'm going to speak more from the Korean fan base just because I can definitely speak from experience. One of the things we were most disappointed about is that on average, Dodger Stadium, with 1 million Koreans there, we saw a margin of about 25 to 4,500 Korean Americans show up to every game he pitched. And that was a pattern. When we go to away stadiums, we saw the exact same thing. One of the best things of the entire season was that I saw a Korean flag in every stadium we went to. However, it boiled down to the postseason. We were fortunate enough to make it to the postseason, and really fortunate that Ryu got to pitch both postseason games at Dodger Stadium. He loves pitching at Dodger Stadium. He has a better record, much better record at Dodger Stadium. He likes the weather in LA, and he just feels comfortable at being at home. The first start against Atlanta, he's like, how many Korean people do you think will come up to this game? Because when you're standing on the field and you look up, surprisingly, you can see a lot. You can hear a lot too. So you hear a lot of the Korean, Hyun-Jin, those different things. We saw an immense drop from the postseason for the Korean fan base. My personal conclusion to that was that Koreans still don't see the value in purchasing a baseball or any sort of ticket to go experience a sports event firsthand. So it's definitely, there's a very fine line between, is it worth it? Is it worth, because, a regular season game, call it $30, a postseason game, that same ticket will go for $250. So we saw a drastic drop in the fan base, which is really disappointing for him too. But I learned that lesson thinking Asians or Koreans still have a very fine line of, we're very frugal in nature. We're very, we calculate every purchase that we're not impulse buyers. So I realized that was a big thing. One of the things I spoke about in Korea is that we need to educate the fans, and a lot of this falls on the players themselves, not to become Ryu fans, not to become Chu fans, but to become the team fans. The Dodgers, we do a lot, and we invest a lot in the Korean community to make our brand known, but there's nothing you can do at this point when they only show up when he's pitching. The one game in July 27th, 28th, 29th, when Chushin-Su, Cincinnati Reds versus the Dodgers, it was like the WBC. We had about 20,000, 25,000 Koreans in the stands. That game was watched by like 16 million Koreans in Korea. It was the first time ever that Ryu and Chu faced each other. So when you look at those things, the WBC in 2009, the Japan final, is something the Dodgers always talk about. 56,000 seats and about 40,000 were Koreans. And they're saying, hey, they can fill a stadium. Why won't they come out to our games? And the truth is, I always say this and I always get in trouble for it. Even when you go back to the 2002 World Cup, Koreans are patriots. They cheer for their country. They don't cheer for the sport. and that's something that we need to educate our fan base. What was the second part? I forgot. I talk so much. Goodness.
And as an Asian, or sorry, as an Asian American in the sports industry?
You know, it's hard to say because this year I was in a position, I was in a platform that people actually heard and listened to everything I had to say because of my tie with Ryu, and because they understand that Ryu, they saw how much impact he had. His jersey sales were like, I don't want to throw up wrong numbers, but his jersey sales in all of Major League Baseball was top 20 the first half of the season. You know, you guys know that one T-shirt that we decided to make, the Dodger T-shirt with the Ryu Hyun-Jin on the back, that sold out like that. So people listened to me when I had something to say. As an Asian American working in sports, I really can't say that I faced any difficulties or any struggles, only because you are in LA. You're in an area where everybody, if you live in LA, you know there's Koreans there. And with Ryu being there, you just, you know, he multiplied everything, his attention and his exposure. So I don't think I had any major difficulties, but I think if there is one blanket statement I can make, it's just getting a job in sports itself is just really hard. That's probably it.
Hi.
You have to make it a good one. It's the last
Yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah.
No pressure.
So you got Hite and Choco Pie to endorse the stadium, right? How did you get Sai to come and perform?
Oh, good question. So the last company that I worked at before I came to the Dodgers was a Korean entertainment company. It's called CJ Entertainment. The network that I built through that job was the entertainment world in Korea. You know, I was always very conscious that I wanted to somehow continue to bring not just alcoholic beverages, but the Korean culture into Dodger Stadium. And this is before Ryu was even there. You know, Facebook and all this is going on. And then I see this video popping up here and there. Psy, and, you know, it started trending a little bit. And I'm so proud of this. Back when it had 40 million hits, I was like, this is really cool. So I look at the video and I say, you know what? It would be so awesome if he could come here and perform the song. So I found out that one of my really close friends has ties with YG Entertainment, which is the entertainment group that represents him. And then I read that he was coming over to LA to meet with Scooter Braun. And I said, you know, I'm just going to shoot in the dark here. And I shot up a few emails saying, hey, while Psy is in LA, how about he comes to Dodger Stadium and he performs? I'll do everything that I can in my entire power to make sure he gets everything, like the entire spotlight for between innings. Everything entertainment happens between innings. And my initial thought was, and we went so far with this thing, my initial thought was, we have a whole section, like you guys. We give away those tickets to all Korean people that know the dance. We have we have Psy in the middle. And then in between the innings, we play the music video, the camera cuts to him, he gets up, and all the fans in that section get up and start doing it all together. I was like, I'm brilliant. I'm so smart. And then I made the mistake of calling it a flash mob. This is back when the whole flash mob stuff was going on. What was that one dance? What was that? What was that called? When like, yeah, that stuff was like kind of like happening. So I presented to my superiors, and I'm like, hey, you know, we're gonna do a flash mob. This guy named Psy, and I needed some support. And our social media manager, he backed me up. He was like, I've never seen any video trending this way. I support Martin. I think we should bring him in. It'll be fun. They turned it down. The day of, Psy's like, yo, I will delay my schedule and come and do this for you, Martin, you know? I obviously my friends in there too. And then the morning of, they canceled the whole thing. It's a ESPN picked up the game. ESPN doesn't want anything called flash mob in their production. I was like, why did I use the word flash mob? So I really begged the CMO of the Dodgers, look, can we change it? I promised this guy that, you know, I'm going to give him something. So he reduced down to, you guys know dance cam. If you go to a basketball game, they do dance cam. Let's just do dance cam, which would cut to different people. And just in case nobody knew the dance, I actually plotted everything, like 6 Korean people. You guys come to the game tonight, sit right here. Our camera 3 is going to get you repeat 7 things. So every group, like if you go back to the video, you're going to notice that like every camera they cut to is like Asian people for some reason. And most of them are my friends. They're like, yo, you want to be on TV? Come here. So we cut to that. And then Psy ended up being in there. And then the crowd went nuts. You know, the video after that, we took credit for his launch because after that performance, that next day we got calls from the Ellen Show, the Tonight Show, the Today Show, and they all called our department saying, how did you guys get that? So after that happened, I got a lot more leeway. That's how I was able to bring Girls' Generation this year. Lena Park came last year, and so I'm continuing to find creative and fun ways, things that we're proud of and as a culture, things that we can cross over without having to sell, and just showing them to our audience at Dodger Stadium. So that's how Sai came, and then Sai, he came back a year after that, and then I even got Ryu. His walk-up song is "Mother, Father, Gentleman." So when he goes up to the bat, they always play a song. He played that song this year. So Sai and Ryu are close friends now,
Cool.
because of that whole incident. That's a good last question.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, Martin and Kevin.